All right, welcome to this explainer. Today we're going to decode what is honestly one of the most fascinating geopolitical mysteries going on right now, a strategy that could completely redefine global trade and security as we know it. We're digging into recent satellite data and Pentagon reports to track this really quiet, methodical expansion across the globe's oceans. It's a strategy where the architecture is made of concrete and steel, sure, but as you'll see, the most powerful weapon might actually just be ambiguity. So let's kick things off with a single, highly revealing number. Literally just the number one. For 8 long years, China had exactly one overseas military base. It opened in Djibouti, on the Horn of Africa, back in 2017. And when you think about it, for a superpower with this incredible shipbuilding capacity, having just one single dot on the map placed them decades behind other historical naval powers who've spent, a century building up these massive networks of bases. Which naturally brings us to a massive logistical puzzle. How do you actually build and sustain a global blue water navy if you don't have bases? How can a nation project power, resupply its ships, and rest its crews without triggering the absolute alarm bells that the word base sets off in foreign capitals? It's a great question, and the answer is surprisingly patient. That brings us right into our first major hurdle, the one base problem. Because, simply put, a single outpost in Djibouti just cannot sustain a global fleet. Take a look at the world's critical economic arteries, places like the Malacca Strait or the Strait of Hormuz. We're talking over 20 million barrels of oil flowing through each of these choke points every single day. That is the economic jugular of the modern world. It dictates global energy prices and supply chains that affect every one of us. So if you want your warships to loiter near these critical zones, you absolutely need a chain of harbors. A single dot on the map is just not going to cut it. So how do they solve this? Well, that leads us to the dual-use playbook. Get a load of this number, 168. Over the years, Chinese state-owned companies have built or financed around 168 commercial ports across nearly 90 countries. Just think about the sheer scale of that for a second. Through purely commercial means, this massive pre-existing foundation of deep-water infrastructure has been laid down all over the world entirely under the banner of civilian trade. And the logistical genius of this is that, physically, a commercial pier and a naval pier are practically twins. They both need deep water, heavy cranes, sturdy berths, the whole shebang. Because of this, the playbook becomes incredibly simple. Step 1, quietly upgrade an existing port you already financed. Step 2, call it a logistics facility, and then, just send the warship later. You don't have to build a military base from scratch, you just gently pivot the commercial port's purpose. Let's look at a concrete, real-world example of this in action, the Ream reality. Cambodia's Ream naval base illustrates this pattern brilliantly. The international community basically watched this exact playbook unfold step by step. In 2022, China funded a massive new 650-meter pier there. Now, despite constant official denials that this was a Chinese base, the concrete kind of told a different story. A 650-meter pier could fit an aircraft carrier, which is a bit much considering Cambodia's Navy mostly operates small patrol boats. Then, in December 2023, 2 Chinese Type 05A corvettes, these light, heavily armed warships, moved in. That was a full 16 months before the facility even officially opened. And when it finally did have its formal inauguration in April 2025, it was tied directly to a military exercise called Golden Dragon. We're talking 2,000 total troops, nearly half of them Chinese, amphibious armor, drones, and robotic dogs. Yeah, robotic dogs. I think we can all agree that your standard Joint Logistics Center doesn't usually kick things off with a massive amphibious assault rehearsal. It showed us exactly what this facility is truly capable of supporting and highlighted a deepening reliance on Chinese military hardware. Now, this creates a major clash of definitions, bringing us to exclusive versus unconstitutional. The tension here is absolutely fascinating because you have 2 completely different views of the exact same pier. On one side, American defense analysts at the Pentagon and CSIS have concluded that China's Navy holds privileged or even exclusive access to this pier. But on the flip side, Cambodia is firmly and publicly stating that granting exclusive foreign access is straight up unconstitutional. They explicitly forbid foreign military bases on their soil. So to prove their point and counter the U.S. narrative, Cambodia did something pretty savvy. They invited wary navies, specifically from Japan and Vietnam, to make port calls at Ream. It was a brilliant PR move to say, hey, look, our doors are open. But as defense analysts quickly warn, an open door for cameras on a sunny Tuesday is fundamentally different from an open door during a tense geopolitical crisis. Let's zoom out a bit to understand why this matters globally. It's all about strategic choke points. You see, Ream itself isn't the ultimate prize. The map is the ambition. If you look at Ream's strategic geography, it faces the Gulf of Thailand, positioning it perfectly near the southern approaches to the Malacca Strait. Having access here allows China's navy to sustain ships and loiter right near its own economic jugular, without having to sail thousands of miles back home just to refuel. And the thing is, this strategy doesn't stop in Cambodia. It's designed to scale. Let's look at what we can call 20 possible doors. In a December 2025 report, the Pentagon identified a really stunning number, roughly 20 more candidate harbors around the world where this exact same dual-use pattern could repeat. Just look at the geographic spread of these potential hosts. You've got Pakistan and Sri Lanka in the Indian Ocean, Nigeria and Angola over on Africa's coasts, and the Solomon Islands and Vanuatu deep in the Pacific. The brilliance of this approach is that the ambiguity is literally the weapon. China doesn't actually need to pour concrete for 20 new military bases. It just needs its geopolitical rivals to spread their attention completely thin, hedging their bets against 20 highly credible possibilities across 3 major oceans. But before we assume this expansion is just some unstoppable wave, we need a reality check. Let's talk about the ghost in the Atlantic. Take the port of Bata in Equatorial Guinea, for instance. Since 2021, American officials were sounding the alarm, warning that a Chinese-financed port here was going to become this imminent Atlantic naval base. Yet, as analysts noted in 2026, 5 full years later, no such base exists. The commercial piers are there, sure, but the warships? Absent. It turns out an Atlantic base might be neither imminent nor strictly necessary right now. Which leads perfectly to this phenomenal quote from defense analysts: "The fear consistently runs ahead of the concrete." I love that phrasing because it perfectly summarizes why we absolutely must look at the hard evidence rather than just the hype when we're analyzing global basing strategies. Ultimately, the reason the concrete hasn't been poured everywhere is because of the host nations themselves. Every host country has to do its own quiet arithmetic. They have to calculate the incredibly steep geopolitical price of renting out their sovereignty to a superpower's navy. The costs are heavy. You're looking at a potential loss of sovereign autonomy, deeply strained relationships with the United States, and completely unpredictable regional blowback. That's a calculation that's pretty hard to just buy your way out of. So, as this explainer shows, the distance between 2 real bases and 20 possible ones is going to be settled harbor by harbor, negotiation by negotiation. The commercial ports are already there. The piers are built. The million-dollar question isn't, will they build it? It's when the next global crisis hits and the pressure mounts, who actually gets to tie up at the pier and whose warships get told the berth is full. Definitely something to chew on as you look at the shifting map of global power. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and we'll see you next time.